I hate mandatory volunteer events. Seriously. Nothing makes charity work feel more soul-crushing than the word required stamped across the hospital memo. Yet there I was, Dr. Ivy Martinez, cardiothoracic surgeon, standing in a field outside Montgomery General with dirt under my manicured nails and sweat beading at my temples despite the cool spring air. "You're planting it too deep," a voice chirped beside me. I turned, annoyed at the unsolicited advice, only to find myself staring into the bluest eyes I'd ever seen. The root ball needs to sit higher or it'll suffocate. The owner of those eyes crouched beside my sad attempt at environmental heroism, her blonde ponytail swinging as she demonstrated the proper technique. A name tag reading Jillian Morris, RN, was pinned to her Montgomery General t-shirt, which was already smeared with earth. "I'm a surgeon, not a gardener," I muttered, but stepped back to let her fix my mistake. "Surgery, gardening? Both require good hands and patience," she replied, flashing a smile that revealed a slight dimple in her right cheek. She had freckles scattered across her nose, and somehow, impossibly, a smudge of dirt made them more charming rather than less. "I'm Jillian, cardiology department." "Ivy," I replied, then added unnecessarily, "cardiothoracic." "Oh, you're Dr. Martinez." Her eyes widened in recognition. "I just transferred from county. Haven't had the chance to work with you yet." Something about her enthusiasm made me uncomfortable. I'd built careful walls between myself and the hospital staff after the Michaela disaster last year. "Well, welcome to Jen." My words were cut short by a fat raindrop landing squarely on my forehead. Within seconds, the clear spring sky transformed into a downpour that had volunteers scrambling in all directions. "Over there!" Jillian grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward a maintenance shed at the edge of the planting area. We weren't the only ones with this idea, but we were the fastest, slipping inside just before the heaviest sheets of rain descended. The shed was cramped, smelling of fertilizer and damp earth. Just enough light filtered through a dirty window for me to see Jillian's face as she pushed wet hair from her forehead. That came out of nowhere, she laughed, seeming completely unbothered by the fact that her hospital-issued t-shirt now clung to her athletic frame. I tried not to notice the way it defined the curve of her breasts or the slight narrowing at her waist. Weather app predicted clear skies all day. I tried to maintain some professional dignity despite being soaked to the skin. "Best laid plans," she shrugged, then surprised me by reaching toward my face. Her fingers gently brushed my cheek, sending an unexpected jolt through my body. "You had a bit of mud right there." I stepped back instinctively, bumping into a shelf of gardening tools. "Thanks," I mumbled, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. The rain pattered against the roof, filling the awkward silence between us. Outside, other volunteers huddled under trees or ran for their cars. "So, Dr. Martinez, what made you choose cardiothoracic surgery?" Jillian asked, seemingly comfortable with our forced proximity in a way I decidedly was not. "I like fixing broken hearts," I answered automatically, then winced at how that sounded. Literally, I mean. Her laugh was warm and genuine. "Maybe the metaphorical ones too? That would make you quite the Renaissance woman." I couldn't help but smile. "Trust me, I'm much better with scalpels than emotions." "I don't know about that," she said, studying my face with those remarkable blue eyes. "People with no emotional intelligence usually don't admit to lacking it." The rain continued to pound the roof, but suddenly, I wasn't in such a hurry for it to stop. There was something about Nurse Jillian Morris that made this cramped shed feel less like a prison, and more like a chance encounter I might not mind remembering. And when she threw her head back laughing at my sarcastic comment about hospital politics, I caught myself watching the elegant line of her throat and wondering what it would be like to trace it with my finger. Damn it. This was exactly what I promised myself wouldn't happen again after Michaela. 3 days after the tree planting event, I spotted her from across the cardiac care unit. Nurse Morris, Jillian, was checking IV lines with efficient movements, pausing to chat with a patient who looked significantly less grumpy than he had during my morning rounds. Even from a distance, I could see how her presence seemed to brighten the sterile hospital environment. I ducked behind a supply cart when she looked up, feeling ridiculous. I was a respected surgeon, not some flustered teenager. Yet something about our rain-soaked conversation in that shed had stuck with me. Her easy laugh, the way she'd asked thoughtful questions instead of the usual medical gossip most staff gravitated toward. "Dr. Martinez?" The charge nurse interrupted my thoughts. "We need a consult in 412. I welcomed the distraction, burying myself in patient files and surgical schedules for the rest of the day. Professional distance was my specialty. Had been ever since Michaela Ramirez had turned my life upside down with her lies about her supposedly open marriage that her wife knew nothing about. But Montgomery General was only so big, and cardiac care even smaller. Our paths crossed again 2 days later during a code blue. I barked orders while Jillian moved with surprising composure for someone relatively new to our unit, anticipating needs before they were spoken. "Nice work in there," I offered afterward, surprising myself with the unsolicited compliment. "Just doing my job," she replied, but the slight flush on her cheeks told me she wasn't immune to praise. "Though I think Mr. Dobson has decided we're his favorites now." As if summoned by his name, the nurse's station phone rang. The charge nurse sighed after answering. "It's Dobson again. Says he'll only talk to," and I quote, "the nice blonde nurse and that serious doctor lady." Jillian laughed. "Seems we're a package deal now." I ignored how those words made something flutter in my chest. The Dobson situation became our unwitting connection point. The 78-year-old retired teacher refused his medications unless one of us administered them. His stubborn devotion to what he called his medical dream team meant Jillian and I found ourselves checking on him together, often during shift overlaps. "You don't seem like the volunteering type," Jillian commented one evening as we left his room. "No offense, but tree planting didn't appear to be your natural habitat." "What does that mean?" I asked, more curious than defensive. "Just that you seem more operating room than great outdoors, designer shoes rather than gardening gloves." I had to smile. Fair assessment. Hospital board thinks community involvement improves our image. I've been trying to rebuild mine, so I show up when volunteered. Her eyebrow raised. "Rebuild?" I hesitated, then decided a sanitized version couldn't hurt. Professional setback last year. Politics and personalities, nothing interesting. "I doubt that," she replied, studying me with those perceptive blue eyes. "But I won't pry." Somehow, her restraint made me want to tell her more. We ended up in the doctor's lounge after our shifts, empty except for the ancient coffee maker gurgling in the corner. "This stuff is toxic," I warned, as she poured 2 cups. "I've tasted worse. Hospital in Tuscaloosa had coffee you could use to refinish furniture." She handed me a chipped mug. "So, what really happened last year?" Maybe it was fatigue breaking down my defenses, or perhaps I just needed someone to talk to who wasn't there when it all imploded. Whatever the reason, I found myself telling her about Michaela Ramirez, the brilliant pharmaceutical rep who had pursued me relentlessly. She convinced me her marriage was effectively over. "Just paperwork," she said. The coffee tasted bitter, matching the memory. Turned out her wife had no idea we were seeing each other. When I confronted Michaela, she claimed I misunderstood their arrangement. "That's awful," Jillian said softly. "What happened?" "Her wife works in hospital administration across town. Word spreads. Some colleagues decided I was a homewrecker." I shrugged, trying to seem indifferent to the memory of whispers and changed lunch plans. Hence my dedication to improving my community, standing through exciting activities like tree planting. She surprised me by reaching across the table, her fingers briefly touching the back of my hand. "For what it's worth, I think you were the victim there, not the villain." The simple gesture of support shouldn't have affected me so strongly, but as I watched her sip her terrible coffee, blonde hair falling loose from her ponytail after a 12-hour shift, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time, the dangerous pull of possibility. "Your turn," I said, desperate to shift attention away from the warmth spreading through my chest. "What brought you to Montgomery General?" Her smile faltered slightly. "Change of scenery. Sometimes you need a fresh start, you know?" I did know. And watching her fingers nervously trace the rim of her coffee mug, I wondered what story Jillian Morris wasn't telling me. "Another volunteer day?" I asked, eyeing the flyer Jillian had slid across the nurse's station counter. 3 weeks had passed since our coffee confession, and we'd fallen into a comfortable professional rhythm interrupted by moments of something I wasn't ready to name. "Wildflower planting at Eastbrook Park," she confirmed, eyes bright with enthusiasm that somehow never seemed forced. "Thought you might want to maintain your stellar community service record." I should have said no. I had research to review, a presentation to prepare. "What time?" I heard myself ask instead. Saturday morning found us kneeling in soft soil at opposite ends of a sprawling meadow, part of a city beautification project. Unlike the hospital event, this was purely voluntary. a fact Jillian had taken great pleasure in pointing out when I complained about the early hour. "Admit it," she called across the field during a water break. "You're enjoying yourself." I was, though not for the reasons she assumed. My enjoyment had little to do with native Alabama wildflowers and everything to do with watching sunlight play across her face as she worked. "Come help with this section." She waved me over as volunteers began dispersing to new areas. "The soil's harder here." I made my way to her plot, noticing how her worn jeans hugged her hips, how her t-shirt rode up slightly when she bent forward. "Stop it, Ivy. You really do have a thing for plants," I commented, kneeling beside her. "My grandmother had gardens everywhere. She taught me that growing things is good for the soul." Jillian demonstrated the proper spacing for black-eyed Susan's seedlings. "Here, try this one." Our hands met in the dirt as I reached for where she was pointing. Unlike our first meeting, I didn't pull away. Her fingers were warm against mine, and when our eyes met, something electric passed between us. "Like this?" I asked, my voice unexpectedly husky. Her tongue darted out to wet her lips. "Perfect." We continued planting in charged silence, breaking it with inconsequential conversation that did nothing to dissipate the tension crackling between us. When her fingers brushed mine again while passing a trowel, I knew it wasn't accidental. "We make a good team," she said finally, sitting back on her heels to survey our work. "Better than our tree planting debut, certainly." I gestured to the neat rows of seedlings. "These might actually survive." Her laugh was bright and genuine. "I'd say our odds have definitely improved." The moment felt weighted with possibility, until a volunteer coordinator called for everyone to gather for a group photo, breaking the spell. Later that week, the cardiology department dinner presented another opportunity for boundaries to blur. These quarterly events were typically tedious affairs: department updates, budget discussions, and mediocre catered food. I arrived late, slipping into the only available seat, directly across from Jillian. She smiled in greeting, looking strikingly different, with her blonde hair falling in loose waves rather than her usual practical ponytail. The restaurant's dimmed lighting cast a warm glow across her features, highlighting cheekbones I hadn't properly appreciated before. Throughout the chief's endless presentation, I found my attention repeatedly drawn to her. She caught me looking once and held my gaze for a beat too long before turning back to the speaker. As the evening progressed, colleagues gradually departed until only a handful remained. When Dr. Sanders and his wife left, suddenly Jillian and I were alone at our end of the table. "And then there were two," she commented, taking a sip of her wine. "I should probably go," I replied, making no move to leave. "Probably," she agreed, equally stationary. Under the table, our knees touched. Neither of us shifted away. The contact was simple, innocent even, but my heart raced as though I'd just completed a complex surgery. "Ivy," she said quietly, "I know things are complicated. Because we work together. That's part of it." I stared down at my half-empty wineglass. "And because of Michaela." "Yes." Jillian's voice was gentle. "I understand being cautious after what happened." The restaurant had nearly emptied. Our server tactfully placed the check between us without interrupting. "I like you," I admitted finally, meeting her gaze. "More than I should." "The feeling is mutual." Her foot gently nudged mine beneath the table. "But I'm willing to follow your lead on what happens next." The admission hung between us, both exhilarating and terrifying. Memories of Michaela's betrayal warred with the genuine warmth I saw in Jillian's eyes. Was I ready to risk another heartbreak? Could I trust my judgment after being so spectacularly wrong? "I need time," I said finally. "Time I can give," she replied with a smile that made my chest tighten. "I'm not going anywhere." Walking to our cars afterward, she maintained a respectful distance, yet something fundamental had shifted between us. When we reached her vehicle first, she turned to say goodnight, moonlight silvering her blonde hair. For a breathless moment, I thought about closing the distance between us. Instead, I whispered, "Good night, Jillian," and walked away, feeling her eyes on my back with every step. The annual Montgomery General Hospital fundraiser was the sort of event most staff dreaded but attended anyway, open bar and networking opportunities outweighing the discomfort of formal wear and small talk. I'd almost skipped it this year, but the chief of surgery had personally reminded me that my visibility would be appreciated. Translation, show up or face the consequences. I nursed a glass of champagne near the edge of the ballroom, watching colleagues awkwardly sway to music on the makeshift dance floor. The blue cocktail dress I'd chosen felt suddenly too revealing, too hopeful. "You clean up nice, Dr. Martinez." I turned to find Jillian standing beside me, radiant in a simple black dress that skimmed her curves before ending just above her knees. Her blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo that exposed the graceful line of her neck. "You look incredible," I managed, my practiced professional demeanor deserting me. "Worth the torture of these heels, then," she replied with a smile, eyes traveling appreciatively over my own attire. "I almost didn't recognize you without surgical scrubs or gardening gloves." "I contain multitudes," I quipped, grateful for her ability to ease my tension. We fell into comfortable conversation, gravitating toward a quieter corner as the events swirled around us. 2 weeks had passed since the department dinner. 2 weeks of heightened awareness whenever we encountered each other at the hospital. Of lingering glances and conversations that stretched longer than necessary. "Dance with me," she said suddenly as the band shifted to a slower number. "Jillian, everyone from the hospital is here," I hedged, glancing around at our colleagues. "So? It's just a dance between friends." Her expression remained light, but I caught the flash of disappointment in her eyes. Something in me rebelled against being the cause of that look. Without another word, I set down my glass and held out my hand. Her smile was worth whatever gossip might follow. The dance floor was crowded enough to provide some anonymity as she stepped into my arms. We maintained a respectable distance at first, her hand light on my shoulder, mine proper at her waist. But as the music continued, the space between us gradually diminished until I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. "This is nice," she murmured, her breath tickling my ear. "It is," I agreed, surprised by how natural it felt to hold her this way. When she pulled back slightly to look at me, I saw the question in her eyes, the same one that had been building between us for weeks. The song was ending, couples around us already breaking apart, returning to their tables and conversations. But we remained locked in our own world, the moment suspended in amber. My gaze dropped to her lips, and something inside me finally surrendered to the inevitable. I'm not sure who moved first, perhaps we both did. All I know is that suddenly her lips were on mine, soft and searching in the gentlest of kisses. The fairy lights strung across the ballroom ceiling seemed to explode behind my closed eyelids as something electric coursed through me. It lasted only seconds before reality intruded. We separated, both slightly breathless, aware of our public setting. "Do you want to get out of here?" she whispered. 20 minutes later, we were seated at a 24-hour diner downtown, still in our formal wear, sharing a plate of French fries and laughing at the bewildered looks from other patrons. "So," she said, dipping a fry in ketchup, "that happened." It did. My lips still tingled from our kiss. "No regrets?" "Not a single one." Her foot found mine under the table. "You?" I considered the question seriously. I should have, but no. No regrets. The conversation flowed easily between us as we lingered over coffee, discussing everything from our medical school experiences to favorite books. I learned she played cello, volunteered at an animal shelter, and secretly loved terrible reality TV shows. She discovered my passion for old jazz records, my failed attempts at making sourdough during the pandemic, and my dream of someday visiting every national park. "You're not what I expected, Ivy Martinez," she said as we finally left the diner around midnight. "What did you expect?" "Someone more rigid. Less willing to sit in an all-night diner in designer clothes eating greasy fries." I laughed. "I'm still trying to figure out who I am after Michaela." For a while I just became what I thought would hurt less, detached, professional, guarded. She stopped walking, turning to face me under a streetlight. "And now?" "Now I'm wondering if it's worth the risk to be something else." I stepped closer, emboldened by the night air and the memory of her lips against mine. Someone who might get hurt again, but who might also feel something real. When she kissed me this time, there was nothing hesitant about it. Her arms wrapped around my neck as mine encircled her waist, pulling her against me as though I could absorb her warmth permanently. "Come home with me," she whispered against my mouth. The drive to her apartment passed in a blur of anticipation and second thoughts. Standing at her threshold, I hesitated one final time. "We can just talk," she offered, reading my uncertainty. But as the door closed behind us, talking became the last thing on my mind. In the dim light of her living room, we came together like magnets, hands exploring, breaths mingling. Professional boundaries and past heartbreaks dissolved against the reality of her body pressed to mine, her fingers tangling in my hair as I backed her against the wall. "Are you sure?" I managed between kisses. Her answer was to take my hand and lead me toward her bedroom, crossing the final threshold together. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, painting golden stripes across rumpled sheets. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't place where I was. Then I felt warm breath against my shoulder, and memories of the previous night flooded back. Jillian slept peacefully beside me, one arm draped across my waist, blonde hair spread across the pillow like spilled sunshine. I studied her face, the scatter of freckles across her nose, the slight upturn of her lips even in sleep. Something tightened in my chest, a feeling I'd sworn never to allow again after Michaela. I should have been panicking. Instead, I found myself cataloging the differences between this moment and mornings with Michaela. No urgent texts demanding her attention, no hasty excuses about needing to get home. Just quiet breathing, and the promise of coffee. As if sensing my thoughts, Jillian stirred. Her blue eyes opened, momentarily confused, then warmed with recognition. "Hey," she murmured, voice husky with sleep. "Hey yourself," I replied, surprising myself with how natural this felt. "Having second thoughts?" She propped herself on one elbow, suddenly alert. I considered the question honestly. Strangely, no, maybe third or fourth thoughts, but not second ones. Her laugh was bright in the morning stillness. "I'll take it." We established our routine over the following weeks. Early morning coffee runs before hospital shifts, professional distance in corridors that occasionally broke down into lingering glances when we thought no one was looking. At work, we were Dr. Martinez and Nurse Morris. After hours, we discovered each other. "Favorite coffee?" she asked one morning as we stood in line at the cafe 3 blocks from the hospital. "Black, 2 sugars." "Predictable," she teased. "I bet you order the same sandwich every time too." I raised an eyebrow. "And what's wrong with knowing what you like?" "Nothing." She smiled, her shoulder brushing mine as we moved forward in line. "Just means I need to work harder to surprise you." That was Jillian, always pushing boundaries I hadn't realized I'd built, challenging my careful structure with spontaneity. She added plants to my apartment, color to my wardrobe, and somehow, imperceptibly, joy to days that had once been measured solely in surgical successes. "Come hiking with me this weekend," I suggested one evening as we prepared dinner in my kitchen. "There's a trail outside the city I think you'd love." Saturday morning found us ascending a winding path through oak and pine, spring wildflowers dotting the underbrush. Jillian stopped frequently to identify plants, her knowledge impressive and endearing. "My grandmother again," she explained when I commented. "She believed in knowing the names of things. Said it showed respect for the world around you." "She sounds wise." She was. Sadness briefly clouded her features. "I lost her last year. It's partly why I needed a fresh start in Montgomery." I squeezed her hand, understanding loss without needing details. We continued climbing in companionable silence until reaching the summit lookout. Montgomery sprawled below us, the Alabama River winding like a silver ribbon through the landscape. "It's beautiful," Jillian breathed, leaning against the wooden railing. "Worth the climb?" I moved behind her, arms encircling her waist. She turned in my embrace, eyes meeting mine with an intensity that still startled me. "Definitely worth it." When our lips met, the kiss tasted of trail mix and possibility. Her hands tangled in my hair as mine pulled her closer, the panoramic view forgotten in favor of a more immediate beauty. Later that month, I surprised her with weekend reservations at a coastal bed and breakfast, my attempt at returning her gift of spontaneity. We drove with windows down, singing off-key to radio hits, and stopping at roadside stands for boiled peanuts and peach cider. "I never pegged you for a beach person," she commented as we walked barefoot along the shore that evening, waves lapping at our ankles. "I'm not, usually. I watched gulls wheel overhead. But I'm learning there are exceptions to most of my rules these days." She squeezed my hand. "Growth looks good on you, Dr. Martinez." Our room featured whitewashed furniture and a balcony overlooking the Gulf. We spent hours talking about childhood dreams, professional ambitions, past relationships. The easy conversation eventually gave way to more physical forms of communication as moonlight silvered the room. In the afterglow, Jillian traced patterns on my skin, What are we doing, Ivy? Right this moment, or existentially speaking? She laughed softly. Somewhere in between. We've been seeing each other for almost 2 months. And you're wondering if this is just a fling? I propped myself up to look at her properly. Maybe. Or if you're ready for it to be something more. The question hung between us, important and unavoidable. After Michaela, I'd convinced myself I was better alone, safer in isolation. But Jillian had slipped past defenses I thought impenetrable, bringing color to a world I'd resigned myself to seeing in grayscale. I'm not good at vulnerability, I admitted, but I'm trying to be better, with you. She smiled, pulling me down for a kiss that felt remarkably like a promise. That'll do for now, she whispered against my lips. I recognized her immediately, despite the year that had passed. Michaela Ramirez stood at the nurse's station, her dark hair shorter than I remembered, but her posture unmistakable, confident to the point of arrogance, one hip cocked as she chatted with a nursing assistant. My stomach dropped, as though I'd missed a step on a staircase. Dr. Martinez, she turned as I approached, smile widening. Just the person I was hoping to see. What are you doing here? I kept my voice professionally neutral despite the adrenaline surging through my system. New pharmaceutical line I'm representing. Thought I'd deliver the samples personally. Her eyes moved over me in a familiar way that once would have thrilled me. Now it just made my skin crawl. You could have left them with my assistant. I reached for the folder she extended, careful to avoid touching her fingers. And miss catching up? It's been too long, Ivy. Jillian rounded the corner before I could respond, stopping short when she saw us. Her eyes flickered between Michaela and me, instantly registering the tension. Nurse Morris, I acknowledged stiffly. This is Ms. Ramirez from Bell Tower Pharmaceuticals. Pleasure, Jillian said with professional courtesy that revealed nothing of our relationship. Likewise. Michaela's assessment was swift and dismissive before returning her attention to me. We should grab coffee, talk about the clinical applications. I'm in town all week. Email my office for an appointment, I replied, already backing away. If you'll excuse me, I have rounds. I avoided Jillian for the rest of the day, ignoring her texts asking if everything was okay. That evening, I canceled our plans with a vague excuse about paperwork. The next morning, I took the stairs instead of the elevator, where we usually accidentally ran into each other. It was childish, I knew, but Michaela's appearance had thrown me more than I wanted to admit, not because I still had feelings for her, seeing her had confirmed that particular fire was long extinguished, but because her presence threatened the fragile happiness I'd built with Jillian. By the third day of my avoidance strategy, a text arrived that I couldn't ignore. My place, 7 p.m. Either show up or admit you're hiding. Jillian opened her door with arms crossed, blue eyes stormy. So you're alive after all. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. I needed space. Space, I understand. Ghosting, I don't. She stepped aside to let me in. What happened? 1 minute we're fine, the next you're treating me like a contagious patient. I sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. Michaela. She's left her wife, for good, allegedly. Jillian's expression shifted from anger to concern. And came looking for you. She hasn't said it outright, but the implication is clear. I rubbed my temples. She wants another chance. Do you want that? The question was asked quietly, without accusation. No, God, no. I looked up, needing her to believe me. But it's complicated. Explain complicated to me, Ivy, because from where I'm standing, it's pretty simple. Either you want to be with me, or you don't. She could make trouble for me at the hospital, for both of us. It sounded weak even to my ears. Her connections in administration. So you're afraid? Yes, I admitted, the truth finally breaking through. Not of wanting her back. I'm afraid of losing what we have, of history repeating itself, of trusting my judgment when I've been so wrong before. Jillian sat beside me, close enough that I could smell her vanilla shampoo, but not touching. And your solution was to push me away before I could hurt you? Put that way, it sounded absurd. I didn't say it was a good solution. Ivy, her voice softened. I'm not Michaela. I've never lied to you. I know that intellectually, but seeing her again, it brought everything back. All the doubt, the humiliation, the questions about my own judgment. She nodded slowly. I understand better than you might think. But shutting me out isn't fair. To either of us. You're right. I reached for her hand. I'm sorry. I care about you, she said, twining her fingers with mine. More than I've cared about anyone in a long time. But I need a partner who won't disappear when things get difficult. The word partner hung between us, weighty with implication. Were we ready for that? Was I? I began carefully, I think maybe we should take a break. Just until I figure out how to handle Michaela. Jillian's hand went slack in mine. A break. Not because I want to, because I need to deal with this without hurting you in the crossfire. That's not your decision to make for me. Her voice had gone tight. I'm a grown woman who can decide what risks I'm willing to take. Jillian. No. She pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. If you want a break, call it what it is. You're scared and you're running. That's not fair, I protested, rising to face her. Isn't it? Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Tell me honestly that you're not using Michaela as an excuse to protect yourself from whatever this is becoming between us. I couldn't. The truth was that Michaela's appearance had forced me to confront how deeply I'd begun to care for Jillian, and how terrified that made me. I need time, I said finally. Time. She nodded slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. Fine. Take all the time you need, Ivy, but don't expect me to be waiting when you figure it out. I left her apartment with a feeling of déjà vu. Once again walking away when what I really wanted was to stay. The hospital became a minefield of memories. Every corner held the ghost of a shared joke, a brushed hand, a stolen glance. I threw myself into surgery with renewed dedication, scheduling back-to-back procedures that left me too exhausted to think about blue eyes and disappointed faces. Michaela continued her campaign, appearing with coffee outside the surgical wing, sending texts that grew increasingly bold. We were good together, Ivy. We could be again. I ignored most, responded curtly to others. But she was persistent, a trait that had once attracted me and now repelled. You look like hell, Dr. Chen commented after a particularly grueling valve replacement. When's the last time you slept? I shrugged, scrubbing my hands with unnecessary vigor. I'm fine. Right. That's why you nearly bit off Johnson's head for handing you the wrong clamp. I hadn't realized my mood was affecting the surgical team. I'll apologize. Or you could fix whatever's actually wrong. Chen's knowing look suggested she had pieced together more than I'd intended anyone to know. 2 weeks after our confrontation, I spotted Jillian across the cafeteria, laughing with another nurse. She looked good, hair freshly trimmed, scrubs somehow making her look more put together than the rest of us sleep-deprived medical staff. She hadn't noticed me yet, and I took the coward's way out, abandoning my lunch tray and retreating to my office. Dr. Reynolds found me there an hour later, staring unseeing at patient files. Got a minute? He asked, settling uninvited into the chair across from me. I'm rather busy. You made Garcia cry during rounds this morning. I winced. I'll apologize. That's 3 apologies this week. Reynolds leaned forward. What's going on, Ivy? This isn't like you. Just stressed. I'll do better. He studied me for a long moment. Would this have anything to do with Nurse Morris requesting a transfer to the ER? My head snapped up. What? Effective Monday. She cited professional development opportunities, but I'm not an idiot. The news hit me like a physical blow. Jillian was leaving cardiology, leaving me, without even saying goodbye. That's her choice, I said finally, the words tasting bitter. Reynolds sighed. Look, I don't know what happened between you two, and frankly, I don't want to. But I need my chief resident functioning at full capacity, not walking around like someone stole her favorite scalpel. I managed a weak smile at his attempt at humor. Understood. After he left, I stared at my phone, finger hovering over Jillian's contact information. What would I even say? I was the one who had asked for space. I was the one afraid of what was growing between us. I had no right to be upset that she was moving on. The rest of the week passed in a fog. I performed surgeries mechanically, efficient, but without my usual passion. I avoided the cardiology floor as much as possible, opting to send residents for consults I would normally handle personally. Sunday evening found me at home, staring out at a sudden spring thunderstorm that had darkened the sky prematurely. Lightning flashed, illuminating my apartment, a space that had felt sufficient before Jillian but now seemed hollow and lifeless. The few plants she had given me were drooping, neglected during my emotional retreat. The rain pounding against my windows reminded me of that first day at the tree planting, sheltering together in the maintenance shed. How much had changed since then? How much I had changed, or at least started to, before fear pulled me back into old patterns. My phone buzzed with a text from Michaela, thinking of you during this storm. Remember that night at the lake house? I did remember. A weekend stolen while her wife was supposedly at a conference. What had seemed exciting then now made me vaguely nauseated. I deleted the message without responding. Lightning flashed again, thunder following almost immediately. In that brief illumination, I saw my reflection in the window. Pale, tired, alone by choice rather than circumstance. What was I doing? I had pushed away someone who genuinely cared for me because I was afraid of being hurt again. Instead, I'd hurt myself, hurt Jillian, and accomplished nothing except proving I was exactly as emotionally stunted as I'd feared. Tomorrow, Jillian would start in the ER. Our paths would cross less frequently, professional interaction replacing the warmth we'd built. Eventually, someone else would notice her laugh, her kindness, her passionate dedication to her patients. Someone else would earn her trust, be invited into her life. The thought was unbearable. Before I could second-guess myself, I grabbed my keys and phone. I had no plan beyond finding her, telling her I'd been an idiot, begging for another chance if it wasn't already too late. The storm had intensified, rain coming down in sheets as I ran to my car. Soaked within seconds, I was reminded again of our first meeting, both of us dripping, confined in a small space, something unexpected taking root. I needed to find her. Now, before I lost my nerve. Before Monday came and she disappeared into another department, another life. Before it was truly too late. Drenched and disheveled, I stood outside Jillian's apartment building, pressing her buzzer with increasing desperation. No answer. Either she wasn't home or she was ignoring me. Both possibilities equally devastating. I called her cell, listening to it ring through to voicemail. Jillian, it's me. I'm outside your building. Please, I need to talk to you. I was wrong, and The system cut me off before I could finish. As I stood there, rain streaming down my face, a familiar voice called from behind. Ivy? What are you doing here? I turned to find Mrs. Gonzalez, Jillian's elderly neighbor, huddled under an umbrella after walking her tiny dog. I'm looking for Jillian. Have you seen her? Not since yesterday, dear. Said something about picking up extra shifts. She examined me with concern. You're soaked through. Come inside before you catch pneumonia. I thanked her but declined, already formulating my next move. If Jillian was working, she'd be at the hospital. I could find her there, explain everything. 20 minutes later, I squeaked through the hospital corridors in my wet shoes, ignoring curious looks from staff. The cardiology floor yielded no sign of her. The ER seemed the logical next step. Perhaps she was getting oriented in her new department. Instead, I found myself face to face with Michaela as the elevator doors opened. Ivy, you're a sight. Her eyes widened at my dripping appearance. I was just coming to find you. Not now, Michaela. I tried to step around her. It's important. She blocked my path. I've been thinking about us. There is no us. There never really was. My patience, already threadbare, snapped entirely. You lied to me, humiliated me, and now you're back supposedly single and expecting me to fall at your feet? Not happening. She blinked, seemingly stunned by my directness. I made mistakes, but... No buts. I'm not interested. I'm trying to fix something that actually matters. Her expression hardened. Someone else, then? That blonde nurse you've been sneaking around with? A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with my wet clothes. How do you... Please, the hospital grapevine never changes. She stepped closer. Does she know you have a history of getting involved with unavailable women? Because technically, while you're still my doctor's contact, our relationship falls under fraternization policies. The threat was thinly veiled. Are you seriously trying to blackmail me? Just pointing out potential complications for your career. Especially if the board gets an anonymous tip about inappropriate relationships with subordinate staff. Fury replaced my earlier desperation. You know what, Michaela? Do your worst. File whatever complaints you want. I'm done letting fear of what you might do control my life. I pushed past her toward the stairwell, her stunned expression giving me a moment's cold satisfaction. 3 flights down, I burst into the ER, scanning for Jillian among the busy staff. Dr. Martinez? A young resident approached. Can I help you find something? Nurse Morris. Is she here? Break room, I think. Orientation paperwork. I found her alone, bent over forms at a small table, blonde hair falling forward to shield her face. For a moment, I just watched her, the careful way she filled out each line, the small furrow of concentration between her brows. Jillian. Her head snapped up, surprise quickly replaced by wariness. Ivy? Why are you— She took in my bedraggled appearance. What happened? Are you okay? No. I stepped forward, water still dripping from my clothes. I'm not okay. I haven't been okay since I walked away from you. She set down her pen. You're the one who wanted a break. I was wrong. I was scared and stupid, and I used Michaela as an excuse to protect myself from how much I care about you. Her expression remained guarded. And now? Now I just ran through a thunderstorm to find you because I couldn't stand another minute without telling you that I swallowed hard, that I'm falling in love with you. The words hung between us, raw and honest. I hadn't planned to say them, hadn't even admitted them to myself until that moment. Before she could respond, the break room door opened. Michaela stood there, composed despite our earlier confrontation. Sorry to interrupt, she said with artificial sweetness, but I need to speak with Dr. Martinez. Actually, Jillian stood. We're having an important conversation. One I'm sure can wait, Michaela countered. This concerns hospital business. No, it doesn't, I said. It concerns your wounded pride and attempts at manipulation. Michaela's eyes narrowed. Careful, Ivy. Remember what we discussed. Threats now? Jillian moved beside me. That's a bit desperate, isn't it? Stay out of this, Michaela snapped. This is between me and Ivy. Actually, Jillian's voice remained eerily calm. It's not. Because anything that affects Ivy affects me. Oh, that's adorable. Michaela's laugh was brittle. The nurse defending her doctor. I wonder what the hospital ethics committee would think about that dynamic. Probably the same thing they'd think about a pharmaceutical rep using personal relationships to influence prescribing patterns, Jillian countered. Which I have documented, by the way. Michaela's confidence faltered. What? Email records, time-stamped meetings that coincide with changing prescription orders. Jillian crossed her arms. I noticed the pattern months ago. Purely professional concern, of course. I stared at her in amazement as Michaela's face drained of color. You're bluffing, Michaela said, but uncertainty tinged her voice. Try me. Jillian held her gaze steadily. Now, I believe you were leaving? The standoff lasted several seconds before Michaela turned on her heel without another word, the door swinging shut behind her. We stood in the break room, the echo of the door slamming behind Michaela hanging in the air between us. Rain pattered against the windows, gentler now than the downpour that had drenched me earlier. Did you really document all that? I finally asked. Jillian's serious expression dissolved into a small smile. Not exactly, but hospital purchasing records would show the pattern if anyone looked carefully enough. I took a calculated risk. A calculated risk, I repeated, shaking my head in amazement. You're incredible. So are you, she replied, her expression softening. Soaking wet and looking like you swam here, but incredible nonetheless. I glanced down at the puddle forming around my feet. Not my most dignified moment. I don't know. There's something to be said for dramatic gestures. She took a step toward me, hesitating slightly. Did you mean what you said before, about falling in love with me? I felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with my drenched clothing. Yes. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it, to even admit it to myself. Oh, Ivy. She closed the distance between us, apparently unconcerned about getting wet as she took my face in her hands. You frustrating, wonderful woman. Then she was kissing me, and I was kissing her back, my cold hands finding warmth at her waist. Neither of us cared about the dampness transferring to her scrubs, or the fact that we were in a hospital break room where anyone might walk in. When we finally broke apart, her blue eyes searched mine. I've been miserable without you. Me too, I admitted. I thought I was protecting myself, but all I did was prove how good I am at self-sabotage. We should probably talk about this somewhere more private, and get you into dry clothes before you really do catch pneumonia. She brushed a wet strand of hair from my face. My shift ends in 20 minutes. An hour later, we sat in her apartment, me wrapped in borrowed clothes that smelled like her, hands curled around a mug of tea. The storm had passed, leaving behind that particular stillness that follows heavy rain. I was afraid, I admitted as we settled on her couch. When Michaela showed up, all the old insecurities came rushing back. Not because I wanted her, but because she reminded me of how wrong I can be about people, about relationships. You weren't wrong about us, Jillian said gently. No, but I almost ruined it anyway. I set my mug down. I couldn't bear the thought of getting hurt again, so I hurt you first. It was selfish and cowardly. And human. She reached for my hand. I wasn't completely honest either. I told you I was transferring for professional development, but really I was running too, trying to protect myself from watching you potentially go back to her. I would never have gone back to Michaela. I know that now. She squeezed my fingers. So where does this leave us? Wherever you want it to, I replied honestly. I know I don't deserve another chance. Stop, she interrupted. No more of that. We both made mistakes. What matters is what we do next. The rain had started again, a gentle percussion against her windows as I pulled her into my arms. What I want to do next is never let you go again. 6 months later, we stood at the community park where we'd first met, watching as a group of volunteers planted autumn flowers around the trees that had taken root despite the challenging summer heat. Our trees, the ones we'd planted that rainy day, had grown surprisingly well, their branches reaching skyward with quiet determination. They look healthy, Jillian observed, her hand warm in mine. Much better odds than you gave them at the time. I may have been overly pessimistic, I admitted with a smile. A pattern, perhaps? Her eyes sparkled with the gentle teasing we developed over our months together. My life had transformed since that stormy night of confrontations and confessions. We'd settled into a relationship that felt both exciting and comfortable. Movie nights and morning coffee, professional respect and personal passion. Michaela had transferred to another territory, her threats evaporating once she realized they held no power over me anymore. I brought you here for a reason, I said, leading Jillian toward a bench beneath the canopy of young trees. To see our handiwork? She asked, settling beside me. Partly. I took a deep breath, suddenly nervous despite all my planning. Also because this is where everything began, where you first called me out for planting too deep. She laughed, the sound as bright and clear as it had been that first day. You were going to suffocate that poor sapling. And you saved it. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around the small box I'd been carrying for days. You saved me too, in a way. Her expression softened as she recognized my serious tone. Ivy. I opened the box, revealing a simple silver band nestled inside. I love you, Jillian Morris. I love your kindness and your strength, your patience and your passion. Will you marry me? Tears sprang to her eyes as she nodded wordlessly, extending her hand so I could slip the ring onto her finger. It's beautiful, she whispered, examining the band now glinting in the autumn sunlight. Like you, I replied, pulling her close for a kiss that felt like a promise, of growth, of nurturing, of a future cultivated together with care. Above us, leaves rustled in the gentle breeze, the trees we'd planted bearing witness to endings become beginnings, to fears overcome by love, to two women who had found home in each other's hearts.